Welcome to HortTube. My name is Putnam. I'm at a bucket list garden to film this morning. I got super lucky. This is the Sarah P. Duke Garden in Durham, North Carolina. Is this part of the Duke campus?
It is. We're part of Duke campus.
Okay, part of Duke campus. And your hat says that. Wanted to film here for a long time, and I got super lucky a year ago. Literally like a year ago this week or next week. We were at a party together. Got invited, plant nerd evening, and I met Bobby Mottern, who actually turns out lives in our neighborhood, and got super lucky. And explain your role here at the Duke Garden.
So I'm a director of horticulture here at Duke Gardens. We have a staff of 17 full-time horticulturalists that work the gardens here, 55 acres.
Yeah.
And a lot to see here. We have a wide variety of garden spaces. It's a large landscape garden, really, is what it is. And we do have plant records. We have, we maintain lots of different collections, but we're really kind of a pleasure garden. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and that is a thing, where you're going to get gardens that are going to be very much 100% invested in protecting plants outside of their native ranges, conservation gardens. You're going to get, places that are really developing new plants, and that's the vast majority. It's almost like a trial garden that you're looking at. And this has always just been a place to come and you can stroll and you can really do a lot of the things you're seeing can be done in your own garden.
Exactly, that's what we want to do. I mean, this is a really big scale, obviously 55 acres, but we have lots of spaces where people can enjoy and focus in on that they could replicate in their own yards. And that's what we would like to do here, is we like to display plant material that's available and accessible, and but also just do it in a really kind of high end, and so people can get great ideas, not only plant material, but hardscape, walling, containers, water features, just anything and everything. We love to be able to display different ideas of what people can try to replicate in their own landscapes.
Nice, and we're going to jump around and take a look at some of your favorite spaces, but can we start with the scree garden?
We're standing here in the scree garden, which is right beside the terraces, which is normally the most desirable place for visitors to come see. We're in the middle of change out right now, so it's not as floriferous, but this is a scree garden that we built right beside the terraces that we wanted to show as a low water use garden example. So, water consumption, is something that, we're more and more aware of all the time, how much we're using here. I think anybody and everybody at home needs to be aware of how much water they're putting on their landscapes as well. This is a great example of what you can do at a very low water use kind of landscape or garden. It's a scree garden, so that means the soil here is what we call scree, so it's a mixture of organic matter, but also this little rocky material that you see here. Very free draining. There are lots of plants that really thrive in this type of soil. A lot of plants that actually have to have this kind of soil in order to do well in this very humid environment. Things like salvia, microphyllus, or greggii, they will tolerate our clay soils, but they don't thrive in it. But you put them in this kind of soil and they just explode and they bloom amazingly well. So that's a great plant for this kind of environment. And again, this is a plant you can go to any of your big box stores, nurseries, local nurseries, and find a very accessible plant. We have euphorbias. We've seeded in some California poppies here. Another plant that's generally hard to grow in this area is your French lavenders.
Right.
They just really despise our soils generally here. But you put them in a very free draining scree kind of environment, and the lavender is absolutely loving life here. And the bees are all over it constantly. Long bloom time during this kind of early part of or late spring, early summer. And just a great plant. Of course, the fragrance, who doesn't love lavender?
Yeah. We just have a hard time with it in our clay soils.
Exactly. But you put it in the right soil and it just does great. We love the nacella or the stipa, feathergrass, I'm sorry. Great plant. No breeze this morning, but anytime you get a breeze, you get that movement immediately with this grass.
And it almost is like a little bit of a fall look to it as well, blended into.
It does. It has that kind of tanny kind of color, and looks great with the other colors that we have.
I think this is a garden people can come to year round and get something from it. So you're like changing out this garden, but we're going to go to some other spots right now that are full bloom.
I mean, if you kind of do gardens, you're going to see color year round. There's something always blooming here, and something always really exciting to see.
So we're at the entryway into your native garden here, and like you were saying off camera, you talked about how this is kind of designed where it makes the native plants useful. You can show the usefulness of them. We go in, Steph and I have visited some gardens in the past where their native garden area kind of has I'm not knocking it, but a little bit of a weediness to it, and they're not showing off how they can be used as great ornamentals. Right.
So native plant gardens traditionally, with the exception of a few, that Mount Cuba, across Northeast, is amazing landscape native plant garden.
Right.
But a lot of native plant gardens do have that kind of wild kind of feeling about them.
Right.
And that's not really appreciated by many people,
including HOAs.
Exactly.
Right.
And,
right.
So, but native plants are super important. Obviously, all of our insects, and wildlife evolved with these plants. They need these plants to survive, and we need this wildlife to survive, for us. So we wanted to design part of our native plant garden here, the Bloomquist Garden, to show off how you can actually do a nice landscaped version with all native plant material.
Nice.
So we'll walk into this space over here and check this out. But this garden space is about 9 acres.
Wow.
And we have about 1,200 species of native plants.
1,200?
Native to the southeastern U.S., all the way to Texas,
gotcha.
all the way to kind of mid-Atlantic, all the way to the mountains.
Okay.
So a lot of species are represented here, and parts of this garden does have that kind of wild feeling to it.
Right.
But again,
and a lot of people back up onto the edges of wild spaces, and they can create these kind of where your ornamental garden kind of fades into the backdrop, which is what you have kind of here.
Exactly.
Where you still have a big collection of native plants that the pollinators can take advantage of, but it rewilds.
That's exactly right. And again, we want to create that kind of legibility or readability for people, because again, when people get into the wild, they really don't, everything kind of blends together. But we want to create a garden space where people could walk into it and feel like, oh wow, I could have this in my backyard and do this with all native plants.
The botany meaning horticulture.
Exactly. So that's what we have over here. It's called the Backyard Wildlife Garden. This is a garden we renovated a couple years ago. It was kind of an overgrown, weedy mess. We redesigned this space so you have a wonderful hardscape seating area. A water feature with the millstone over here. Some nice benches or chairs that we actually built in-house out of recycled lumber. Some boulders for effect, some containers, but again, a very residential feel to this space, and all designed with native plant material around the entire space here. So we've got a lot of things that have been blooming. The irises have already finished blooming. Baptisia is done. The penstemons are kind of wrapping up right now. The Onotheras are blooming right now. We've got some Coreopsis blooming.
We've got some
Gara.
you got some Sarracenia. You got some water bog plants mixed into
Exactly. So a lot going on, and again, this garden blooms all the way from April all the way through October. So you can have this kind of succession of blooming plants using all native plant material from spring all the way through the fall. And
the thickness at which it's planted is probably somewhat self-maintaining.
It is. I mean, there's some weeding to do with any garden, obviously, but again, if you plant thicker, your plants are gonna outcompete the light for the weeds and do really, really well. The other cool thing about these plants is that we didn't have to go to some obscure plant nursery, and located in the mountains of North Carolina to find a lot of these plants. These are things, and these are cultivars of plants that we go to nurseries locally here. We shop at the big box stores just like everybody else does too, but we also, shop at our local nurseries. We go down to Big Bloomers in Sanford. And these are all plants that you can get locally within about an hour's drive from Durham.
Wow.
So in cultivars, we're not using, again, obscure species. A lot of these are cultivars of common species that we use here. Nativars, we call those. And so again, readily accessible plant material. That's what we like to do here.
I've always considered this to be like the grand entry into this garden, coming down the steps here. Can you tell us about this space?
It is. So we're standing in the rose garden here of Duke Gardens, and a lot of people come in this garden and say, well, where are the roses? And, and we have to let people know, well, roses in the southeast generally look great for about 5 weeks.
Right, yeah.
And the rest of the year, they don't look that good. So we redesigned this space. This used to be a monoculture of all roses that we had to spray constantly to keep them looking good, and we decided that just was not a smart thing to do. I don't like keeping plants on life support systems. So we redesigned this space in 2019 to become a garden that was a rose garden, because that's what it always has been. But now it's this kind of eclectic hybrid of a garden with all kinds of unusual plantings, and with roses too.
Yeah, with roses, but up from the top of the steps, it almost looks like a Spanish garden.
It does.
Yeah,
it has that effect. I mean, we brought in the fountain back in 2019, so people really had this wonderful kind of reward they would reach as the very first kind of entry point in the garden. We wanted to, this is also a very sunny, hot location in the garden. So when we decided to add a lot of containers, we knew we had to add things that were going to be really resilient and tough in this full sun location. So we started thinking, well, let's do tropicals and xeric type plants, and because the textures look great, and they can withstand the conditions in this space, in the containers. And by using plants like that, it also allows you to use smaller containers, which would normally dry out immediately, after watering. But now we can put things like agaves and cactus in them, and they look great. So it opened up our window and our possibilities for all kinds of different container styles and plants to be used in containers.
Right, and it's just there's no rules here, because this is a combination of almost like a scree garden and again like a Spanish Mediterranean garden combined with native plants, and there's still roses in the rose garden.
I've had friends do shoot video of themselves here and put it on Instagram or something, and people respond, "Are you in California? Where are you?" Nice. So, but that's what we love about this place. It's about this garden. It's just got this kind of really, really interesting vibe to it, and you've got these wild textured plants, agaves and yucca rostratas and the palms, blended with a lot of typical perennials that everybody would have in their own yard. So that's the beauty of it. And again, this garden blooms all the way from March all the way through the end of November. So, and then you've got all these evergreen plants in here that carry that interest all through the wintertime, which is what we needed. We needed to have a space that was really interesting and dynamic, not just for during rose blooming season.
You got someplace to store these containers?
We do have a greenhouse. So a lot of these plants do go in the greenhouse during the wintertime. So, but a lot of the containers also stay out, like the yucca rostratas, they'll stay out. A lot of the conifers, obviously, they'll stay out, and we'll do some other things during the wintertime as far as containers. But we do have some protected space to do this stuff. So,
with this much acreage, it's actually a pretty good place to just come and relax and walk. And I see that this morning. There's a lot of people just taking advantage of the trails early before when it's cool.
Exactly. We've got over 2 miles of trails throughout Duke Gardens here in 55 acres. So we see a lot of people coming in every day for their morning walks. We see a lot of hospital staff, because we're right here beside Duke Health. A lot of them coming in during various parts of the day for walks. I see a lot of professors teaching classes and things. So it's a lot of university use, obviously, but a lot of community use. And that's what we're really here for, is to kind of be that go-between between the university and the community as well.
Right. So, you got several projects going on in the garden, and this is one.
We do. We're constantly kind of trying to think what's the newest and most interesting thing, and we're adding new garden spaces. So this is a new one right here. This is what we call our Interpretive moss garden. So moss is another one of those plants, again, people just really underappreciate the value of it, I think. A lot of people have moss in their yards, and they try to figure out how to get rid of it and try to grow grass, and I always tell them, you've got moss, you should be thankful. It's a beautiful plant. It's very easy to maintain if you just blow the leaves off of it and do a little weeding. That's essentially all it, and some shade. That's really about all it takes. Moss thrives in low nutrition soils. So where if it's thriving, that means turf grass generally is not going to thrive. So so it's a great plant. There's a lot of species of moss in the Southeast that a lot of people don't know about. In this particular new garden, we're going to highlight some of these species. In these containers you see here, we've got 3 different species of mosses, and we'll be able to tell people and teach people about how this moss grows, not only in containers like this, but also in this little landscape section over here. Moss, when you're walking in the woods around here or anywhere, you now almost always come across mosses growing on trees, on the ground, on boulders, and that's kind of what we have here. And this is a beautiful landscape plant. I love how it fills in those voids where I just can't imagine trying to grow any other kind of plant in these cracks of these boulders. I'm just not really sure what would do well there. But moss thrives. A little bit of moisture and shade, and it will grow in these extremely difficult locations on these rocks like this. And it's just a beautiful way how it softens hardscape, softens boulders. And then you pair it with a few other plants like ferns, some rhododendrons, Japanese maple here in the distance, and then you've got this beautiful green garden that that is very, very easy to maintain. And,
yeah. So you're in a high pine forest here, so you just blow it off.
Yeah, I mean, we pull a few weeds in the fall when the leaves come down. We'll blow those leaves off gently, but that's really about all it takes to maintain this moss. And again, it's a plant that's undervalued. I would love for people to appreciate moss a little bit more, and
even knowing there's other species. Sorry to cut you off,
exactly.
but even knowing there's multiple species.
And in places like this little example, you've probably got multiple species intertwining and growing together, and that's what mosses do. But it's a great plant and should be valued a little bit more.
You have a combination of full-time staff, volunteers, and now you got interns for the summer from various universities.
Right.
How many people is this?
So we have 4 interns. We have about 50 to 60 volunteers to help us out throughout the year.
Okay, gotcha.
But I get the question, well, how many people does it take to run the garden? And I'm always like, well, I don't know because I don't have them. So as many people as I can get, I think we can keep them busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the volunteer help is fantastic. The interns are great every summer, and we also hire Duke students, a dozen or so, during the school year to help us out. Some things in the gardens too. So
nice.
I think we do a really, really good job of trying to maintain all the focus points throughout the gardens throughout the year. So.
Well, tell us about this garden.
So this is the Charlotte Brody Discovery Garden. This is an all-organic vegetable garden, or food garden, I would say.
Right.
Because we have an herb garden, we have a little orchard down here. And this is the vegetable section that we're standing in right now. And we have a few volunteers helping us out this morning. But this is a place where we bring the second grade, all second graders of Durham County come on field trips here.
Right, okay.
And they all come to this garden to understand how food is grown.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of kids, they think food is grown in the grocery stores or the fast food places. And so this is where we teach them that this is where food comes from. It comes from a garden, and they can see things actually growing right here in front of us. We've got corn right here, we've got squash, watermelons, cucumbers, peppers. I mean, really anything and everything you can imagine.
Right.
We've got it going on this season, and we try to change the themes in here every year. So this year it's really going to be about what the Native Americans would have been growing hundreds of years ago. Yeah. So we knew they grew corn, squash, and beans, the 3 sisters. And so you'll see varieties of all the different plants growing, and we'll have some thematic signage to talk about those things. But there's lots of other vegetables we'll be growing in here as well. So we've got some animals. We've got a chicken coop over here. We've got beehives down at the lower end. So again, it's all about kids learning about how food is produced.
Right, and there's a lot of butterfly plants coming along. They'll walk in there too. A lot of things to lure some.
Exactly.
Yeah, some pollinators in here.
A lot of pollinators. So a lot of activity going on in this garden.
Beautiful. Tell us about all the stonework here.
So we have lots of examples of different stonework here that you can see kind of in this space. So we have the stonemason, Brooks Burleson, works with us. He does masonry work. He built this bridge right down here. He does walls, both out of masonry and dry stack. He built the wall over there on the overlook. He does boulder setting. He does steps for us. He does flat work as far as flagstone type work.
Right.
And he's kind of a Renaissance man. He does a lot of this work just by moving boulders by himself, using leverage and rollers and moving these things into place. Boulders that weigh thousands of pounds.
Yeah, wow.
And he's just amazing. A very artistic guy as well. We had an idea that we wanted to do a little landing, kind of a mosaic type landing, replicated some plant material in the landing, made out of stone. And he came up with this idea to do this little landing here that you can see. It's a galanthus or a snowdrop with the fern blended in here out of stone. So this is really his creation. We had kind of the big idea, but he came up with the details of how it would look.
It's unbelievable.
The small stone you see there filling between it is all slate shingle that was left over from a job. So it's turned on edge, recycled, and the granite out of the flowers there is again just some remnant pieces of granite we had left over from a job that he carved. So he just does fabulous work. Very, very fortunate to have him close by to do a lot of this stuff for us.
Yeah, I mean, if you only came here to see this, you would come. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's pretty
if you look at how much detail that is in that.
It is.
So we have some volunteers in the pond at the White Garden.
We do. So we have volunteers who help us out on all corners of the gardens, and
Yeah.
these volunteers are helping out with our aquatic display. We just recently went and purchased some new tropical water lilies, which they are getting installed this morning in the garden. so this is our aquatic team in the pond this morning.
Nice. Okay. So tell me your history in the garden and how do you end up at Duke Gardens?
So I started horticulture at Clemson University.
Gotcha.
And my very first job was working at Brook Green Gardens in Pawleys Island, South Carolina.
Yes, I feel very familiar with it. Love that entry.
Yeah,
it's a dramatic entry to a garden, right?
It is it's one of the best.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's where I got my start. Worked there for about 10 years, director of horticulture. Went back to school at Georgia, got a landscape architecture degree, and came to Raleigh, worked for a small firm. Realized I missed public horticulture dearly.
Right.
And after a few years doing that, I decided, I saw this opportunity come open. I was like, it's time to make the move back. So it's just amazing how it all fell into place for me. So very blessed. So I've been here for 15 years now, and we've been doing a lot of garden renovation. We've seen some of the projects this morning that we've been working on, and more to come. So it's a really, really fun place to work.
Yeah. I was thinking it's not a bad place to show up in the mornings. And it changes every day. Your job gets to change every day, right?
Every day. It's not just seasonal, it's every day. There's something new to be seen.
So when we come in, we always, come through this White Garden, on the way in. It's one of the more impressive pieces. Can you tell us something? What defines a White Garden outside of flowers? I think people would just take flowers as
so it's a monochromatic garden, all based on the color white. So all the flowers we have here, white flowers. But this garden space supports our wedding activity.
Yeah, right.
So we are in the wedding business here at Duke Gardens, and so we have weddings here every single weekend from about the end of March through end of June or so. It slows down in the summer, then picks back up in the fall. So it's a really big business for us, and this space supports all that activity. So
nice.
But yeah, we renovated this White Garden back in 2011, and we were able to take a little trip to England to go see the White Gardens of all White Gardens at Sissinghurst Castle and in England, and to get our inspiration and get our ideas flowing. So we did that. So that's what this garden is based on. Just it's kind of a cottagey garden with small little parterres to it, all filled with perennials, shrubs, and annuals that all bloom white.
Yeah, and we do that weirdly. We do that Penta Angelonia combination that you have up there, but we never done it in all white. Yeah. I really like the white ones together. It really looks great, and Steph is giving a thumbs up over there for it. But green's an important component in a white garden, right? You need that backdrop.
Absolutely. I mean, that's you really don't see the color white unless you have something dark for it to reflect off of or bounce off of. So you got to have some dark green structure. You got to have some. We had to plant an entire wall of evergreen magnolias and juniper back there in order to get that dark green color. But yeah, it's really about the color white and the color green and how they play off of each other. Yeah,
but I think the beauty in the garden, this is one of those gardens that's kind of got those long shadows in it, and then white just is like, once you see white in a shady, kind of part shady space, you go, oh, okay, that's the color it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And with long shadows, and why so many plants, like our native hydrangeas, are white growing in the understory.
They love
it. Just stands out.
They love it.
Yeah.
Early morning is also a great time to see that color white bouncing off the early morning light. Late afternoon, sunsets, also just a great time to see that color kind of reflecting in those light conditions.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bobby. It was great to meet you a year ago, and then to be able to get over here to one of our we've filmed at the other various gardens around the city, and we're so lucky around the Triangle area, which is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, to have these the North Carolina Botanic Gardens right up the road. Duke Gardens, the Ralston, Juniper Level.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we got quite the collection of them, and this one, checks off one of the crowns.
It's a garden-rich area, and we're all fortunate to be in this area. So yeah, come and visit for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.